Hey everybody, today I'm going to be doing a walk around review of the Royal Enfield Classic 500. The one I have here, my bike is a battle green, comes in a number of different variants, but they're essentially the same. There's some minor detail differences from one to another, but more or less they're all the same. Maybe let's just get started with the engine here. This is a 500cc air-cooled 4-stroke single. It has electronic fuel injection, and it has an integrated gearbox, which was a sort of an improvement they did a number of years ago, which is good because it allows the gear system and the engine to all source from the same oil rather than separately. The engine puts out about 27 horsepower, a little more maybe, and the whole bike weighs about 410 pounds. Let's have a look at the instrument cluster, which frankly isn't really much of a cluster. You have your speedometer and odometer. You have this instrument here, which is a 2-liter fuel warning, and then a system ready light to tell you can start the engine. You'll notice there is no tachometer, but frankly, I don't really know any riders who actually rely on a tachometer to know when to change gears anyway. It's far better riding attitude to sort of keep your head up and your eyes around you and sort of pass through the gears sort of more organically based on, feel and sound and conditions. So honestly, even if this bike did have a tachometer, I probably really wouldn't give it a second thought anyway. Back to the engine a little bit. Check this out. This engine is a stress member, which means that you see the frame comes down here and then it stops. It bolts into the engine. Now the engine itself is part of the frame, and then you go back here, and then the frame picks up again and becomes the rest of the bike. And this is what essentially accounts for the legendary Royal Enfield vibrations that we all hear so much about. Now, the engine is not seated on rubber mounts to suck up energy. It transfers directly into the bike itself. And let's not forget that this machine is pretty much solid metal right from front to back. There's no plastic on this bike to sort of dampen the shakes and suck up any of that vibrating energy. And that is one very big piston slamming up and down between your shins. So that's going to be a big part of why this bike is known for being a vibrator. But I mean, what can be done about this? Well, there's a few little things that I've done, and I'll go through those in a moment. But let me try and put it this way. If your gas tank has the words Royal Enfield on it, then you're probably just going to have to come to peace with the fact that you're going to have a shaky beast, and that's just the way it is. But it can be lessened, like I said, and maybe I'll go through a couple of those quick things right now. One of the things that I've done with this bike is, for example, I've replaced the seats with Lysette style with a better spring system in them than the original stock. The mirrors are a problem with the stock as far as I'm concerned. They come with long, spindly mirrors that tend to vibrate pretty dramatically through the shifting, and at some speeds they're virtually useless, which is a safety issue for me, and frankly I thought it was a deal breaker. So I've swapped these out to a lower profile, heavy stem mirror, and that has really helped with a lot of the vibration, certainly as it applies to the mirrors buzzing around, making them virtually useless. Another thing that's really helped is, you see here, I've switched to scramble style handlebars, and it gives me a sort of a wider riding profile with this cross member as well. It seems to really have stabilized a lot of that front end element of the shaking, and I'm really happy with how that's sort of managed the ride, the smoothness of the ride. And it's a small detail, but it seems to be working, is these motocross style grips. They're a little thicker in the middle, and they palm in a little bit better because the cup of your hand sort of holds on to them a little more naturally, and I don't know, it just seems to be working for me. So those are just some of the small things that seem to have sort of helped out with my vibration issue. But another element of dealing with the vibration is honestly it's the break-in period. The thing about Royal Enfields is you really have to respect the break-in period. It is really, really important on these machines. You need a lot of self-control for the first 2,000 kilometers. but it's an investment that will pay off for many years. It's here's what I did. I just sort of keep this simple for you. From 0 to 500 kilometers, I stayed at or below 50. From 500 to 1,000, at or below about 65 kilometers an hour. And then from 1,000 to 2,000, at or below about 80 kilometers an hour. And then, of course, after 2,000, you're all done and you can rocket along at 300 kilometers an hour if your bike will do it, and it won't. But there is a few things you're going to notice as the bike matures through its braking period. The sound will get better. It's going to develop a more mellow tone. Your gas mileage will improve. Finding neutral will become easier. I noticed when this bike was new, it was sometimes a bit of a trick to get to neutral. So that actually really helps as well. And your gas mileage. But getting back to my original point is the vibrations. They're gonna calm down quite a bit. In fact, it seems to me that one of the reasons reviewers tend to go on and on about the vibrations of the Royal Enfield is because they're always reviewing brand new machines, and they haven't really had a chance to mature and settle. So if you're reviewing a Royal Enfield that only has 25 kilometers on it, you aren't really going to experience an accurate reflection of how this bike is going to perform for the rest of its life after its run-in period, and that includes obviously the vibration issue. Let me just sort of go through some of the changes that I did to this bike, because that's the nice thing about the Royal Enfield is there's plenty of sort of minor customizations that you can do quite easily, quite simply. There's a lot of stuff available for the bike. Let's just sort of go front to back. So I, first of all, swapped out the original stock tires with the Avons and put on these TKC 80s. It's a knobby tire. I thought, frankly, it suited the military look of the bike. I've also blacked out the spokes. I don't know if you can pick that up, but it kind of gave the front wheel, or both wheels, kind of a heavier look. There's one small detail that I get actually a lot of comments on. I don't know if you can see it here. And I got these little hand grenade valve covers, and I painted them green to match the bike, and I get a lot of comments on those. That's kind of funny. I didn't know people would even notice those. Further to that, I also changed the headlight on the export market to North America. The Royal Enfields all come with these silly little 5-inch headlights, which doesn't really suit the bike. It's certainly not the way it was designed. So I sent away for the 7-inch conversion kit, and then with that, I ordered this peak. And what I did was it came just in pressed, like you couldn't see the logo. So I painted it black, wiped it off, painted it black, wiped it off. Did that a whole bunch of times, and then eventually the paint just sort of settled into the logo, so it sort of makes it stand out a little bit better. It was worth the extra effort. You notice here I've also swapped out these Pilot Light chrome frames for the black ones, and I've replaced the clear lenses with these sort of spooky ones, which overall, especially at night, kind of just looks kind of cool. I like the black on green better than chrome on green, generally. As I mentioned before, there's scramble style handlebars on here with the motocross grips, the lower profile heavy stem mirrors, which I painted to match the bike. This color, by the way, is called NATO green. So what I did was I sanded them, primer coated them, multiple coats of the paint itself, and then several layers, I think 6 layers of clear coat over there to sort of lock it down and protect it. It's I think it's sort of matches the bike well enough to make me happy anyway. There's an engine guard. They come mostly in chrome, but I was able to get it in the battle green to match the bike. So I'm glad I was able to source the green one. I was sort of looking around for that. Another thing I've done is this bike, the Royal Enfield, is heavily badged with reminders that you're riding a Royal Enfield. Every 6 inches there's a sticker that says Royal Enfield. So I took them all off. Then I replaced them with black badges there. This star here, of course, and then it is, after all, the military green. So this bomb Royal Enfield here, and then that, and then I just used a hair dryer and some sticker remover to pull those off. Just a little patience, and it worked pretty good. As I mentioned before, the seats are different. I've got Lysette style seats on here with a matching spring pillion. This bike is made in India. I've always considered this bike sort of an Indian bike with a British soul, and just out of respect for that, I've got a little Vishnu medallion there, really for no other reason. The tail light, I've got it caged in. It is the part that sticks out the farthest, and I think probably fairly vulnerable to cracking or hitting something, so I just caged that in black. And this bike also, just to let you know, does not come with a helmet lock. I don't think any of them do. So I just put a helmet lock on there. And this little leather pouch, it's a little vintage leather pouch I put on there because I use a disc lock on this, and that's just sort of where I put that. Also, there's a battery belt here, and the old British bikes had battery belts, a lot of them. And I've also seen some Royal Enfields around town that for some reason they have exposed batteries because that cover has knocked itself off. So I just didn't want that to happen, so the belt just sort of holds it in. There's also a small little detail here. The design of this bike you see here is fundamentally the same as it has been since it was first created back in 1948. And obviously there have been a lot of modern upgrades and so on over the years, but it's essentially the very same motorcycle it was 70 years ago. And it's been in continuous production actually ever since. So this isn't just some pretend vintage copy of a classic. This is a real classic. It's a Classic 500. And so this little 1948 British tax disc is just my little accent to honor that heritage. I don't know if you can see that, but I've even got it in Royal Enfield green there, just for the hell of it. And then, of course, one final thing. You'll probably have noticed that this bike is not matte green. It came matte green, which I loved. It was, after all, a military style, so the matte seemed to suit it well, but I could not stop the issue with fingerprints all over it. The matte just, every time you touched it, it would leave a print. At least it did for me. So I kind of explored some options, and the best one for me was the 3-stage Maguire's polishing. Was a compound, then a polish, then a Carnauba wax, and it just took a lot of effort and time. But I really like it in the gloss. I mean, maybe not everybody does, but I really do think it suits that quite well. So there's the issue of starting the bike. This does come with a kickstart, as you see here, and an electric start. And sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes you swear that kickstart is strictly ornamental. But there are some tricks to sort of make that work for you well. One of them is to don't turn the key on, just pull in the clutch and then kick it 5 or 6 times. Then turn the key on, but don't press the red starter here, and then kick it another 5 or 6 times, and then finally get the ready switch on, and then give it a few kicks. And more often than not, it actually does sort of jump on you for it to start, but it doesn't always work, and sometimes I'm far too busy for that, so I'll just use the electronic start. So maybe what I'll do is I will start the bike for you just to give you a sense of the sound. There's a lot of options to change the exhausts on these things, the silencers, but I kind of like the original stock one that it comes with. It's the long bottle with the pea shooter at the end there, and I think it gives it a great sound. It's actually sounding better and better as it matures as well. Let me just give this a shot here. You'll see there that I started it with the electronic start there, because frankly I knew that was going to work, so I maybe cheated a little bit there. Okay, so that's it right there. I guess what I'll do is just kind of summarize here. I guess the bottom line from my perspective is I love this bike in all its ragged glory. I see and read a lot of criticisms about how un-Japanese the Royal Enfield is, but to me that's sort of the whole point. You know, there's 100 million awesome Japanese bikes out there, and I could easily have picked one of those up. Probably took me about 10 minutes, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted this bike, and I really like this bike. And you know, it's something a little different. It doesn't ride like what a lot of other motorcycles ride like. You know, it has a certain organic kind of beastly feel underneath you as you're riding it along. And I live downtown, I work downtown, so this is essentially a heavy city commuter bike for me, and it's perfect. I find I can just throw this thing around the city, and it gets me where I want to go, and and I really like it. And I actually get a ton of virtually every day comments. People really like the bike and so on. So I already know I'm not riding a Japanese bike, and I know it doesn't behave like a Japanese bike, and that's just okay with me. It behaves like a Royal Enfield because that's what I wanted. So that's it. Thanks for watching. And if you are considering a Royal Enfield, you probably get what I mean. You'll become Royal loyal, just like I am. Thanks.